Karibu. There's a bit of echo,
okay,
but
great.
we can get it here.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Apologies about these tech issues. Yeah, we'll just keep going and hopefully you can hear me. So my name is Bidhaa. I work in the Trade for Development team.
Semina.
Sorry, I hope that's better without the echo. But yeah, I was just introducing myself. So my name is Bidhaa Ahmed. I work as a trade policy advisor in the Trade for Development team. And yes, I lead on the Developing Countries Trading Scheme. I'll just talk you guys through the key changes we've made in the scheme and hopefully focus on how it benefits Tanzania. If we could move to the next slide, please. Great. So as I'm sure many of you are aware, and it was sort of mentioned in some of the earlier speeches, the Developing Countries Trading Scheme is the UK's new unilateral trade preferences scheme. It entered into force in June last year, and we had a big launch actually in Ethiopia. And yeah, we're really ramping up engagement since it's been launched to increase sort of utilisation and make sure businesses in the beneficiary countries can really take advantage of the scheme. Next slide, please. So in terms of what the objectives are of the scheme and what we're hoping to achieve, so the DCTS, it's one of the most generous trade preference schemes in the world. It covers 65 countries, which is around 3.3 billion people, and over 23 billion pounds of exports to the UK each year. And as the trade envoy just mentioned, based on sort of most recent trade stats, it leads to around £770 million per year of reduced import costs. It's really, a large opportunity for businesses from partner governments who are on the scheme. We've got three core objectives of the scheme. So we want to support sustainable growth and export-led growth in beneficiary countries. We also want to support UK businesses to build supply chain resilience and also have access to a more diverse range of products. So, for example, goods from Tanzania, and also strengthen the economic ties between the UK and a lot of the fast-growing economies on the scheme, like Tanzania. Just to touch quickly on the country coverage, so this map shows which countries are included on the scheme. So the light blue ones are the comprehensive preference countries, so Tanzania is in this category. This is the most generous tier of the scheme, and it covers all sort of least developed countries as sort of defined by the UN. Pretty much every good from these countries qualifies for duty-free access. So it's everything except arms and ammunition. And as has been mentioned before, and I'll touch on in the next slide, we've made some quite critical changes to the rules of origin, so it's a lot more flexible. There's more sort of variety you can have in your supply chain and which inputs you use, which will hopefully support exports to the UK. There are two other tiers to this scheme. The enhanced preference is the second most generous tier. It's about 92% of product lines are duty-free. And this is for all low and middle income countries or low income countries that pass an economic vulnerability test. And then the last tier we have is just for India and Indonesia. These are the ones that don't pass the economic vulnerability test. And the preference offer is a lot less generous. So it's about 65% of products are duty free. So just to summarize what the key policy changes are, in terms of tariffs, we made some additional tariff cuts to the enhanced preference tier. So for comprehensive preferences, which is what Tanzania is on, it's pretty much as generous as it can be. So the tariff changes were more for the other two tiers. But still, we made about 150 additional tariff cuts, which were mainly in agricultural products. And also removed sort of nuisance and seasonal tariffs. And nuisance tariffs are all tariffs under 2%. More countries also automatically now get access to enhanced preferences. So this was 8 countries that, because of some changes we made to the conditions, they've now moved from the standard preferences straight to the enhanced preferences, and Nigeria is one of those countries. In terms of the rules of origin changes, these are the ones that really benefit Tanzania. So again, some of this has been mentioned before, but we've made sort of simpler and more generous product-specific rules for LDCs. So for about half of all HS chapters now, companies can use up to 75% of non-originating content. So this is content that can come from anywhere in the world. It's not checked. There's a lot of flexibility in where you source your inputs. And we've also allowed for more alternative rules. So again, just to give more flexibility in sort of the manufacturing of the end product. We've also allowed for automatic extended accumulation for comprehensive preference countries. So this means now countries on this tier can automatically accumulate with every other country on the scheme, and also the UK's Economic Partnership Agreement countries. And there are about 15 countries in Africa which are included in that sort of Economic Partnership Agreement category. So, for example, Tanzania can now accumulate with up to 95 developing countries. One example of this would be, so for example, if soap was manufactured in Tanzania, you could use coconut oil from a country like Nigeria, which is also on the DCTS, and also an alkaline salt from South Africa, which is an Economic Partnership Agreement country. And you could sort of, you need to add do some value add in Tanzania, but then you could still export to the UK and claim preferences. And again, the aim of this policy change was just to allow for more regional integration and allow also countries to move into higher value added goods. So if you want to produce a more complex product or certain types of agro-processing or tech products, you've got more flexibility from where you source your inputs. The third category of changes we made was around the conditions. So we know actually quite a few other sort of trade preference schemes, particularly AGOA, they've got quite a strict suspension mechanism. We do have a suspension mechanism under the DCTS, and we've also included some sort of environmental conventions in there as well. But generally our policy is that we only suspend in very extreme cases, because we're aware of sort of the negative development impacts. So yeah, we still monitor countries according to these suspension categories, but we only use it in sort of a last resort. Secondly, there was under the previous scheme, and I think currently under the EU, to access enhanced preference, the enhanced preference tier, countries need to sign and ratify a series of international conventions. We've now removed this requirement, which is why those 8 countries sort of moved automatically to the enhanced preferences tier. And again, this was just to simplify the scheme and yeah, sort of make it easier for countries. And I guess for Tanzania, when it graduates from LDC status, it should move sort of automatically to the enhanced preference tier. So it's a bit less of a cliff edge. It won't go straight from comprehensive preferences to standard. The last change we made was in goods graduation policy. This is a bit less relevant for Tanzania, but for the standard preference countries, so for India and Indonesia, we also add another layer where we look at if some of those goods are very competitive, we remove having access to trade preferences to protect preferences and to reduce preference erosion for other countries on the scheme and some. Of it is in vegetable products, and then we also see some exports in machinery and textiles. So I think using a 3-year average up to 2022, there were about £24 million of goods exports from Tanzania to the UK each year. This was the 10th largest in Africa, and I think in our eyes we see it definitely as a growing market. Over 99% of this is eligible for duty-free access to the UK, and we estimate just under £200,000 of tariffs are saved on exports to the UK each year from the DCTS. But again, we hope this number will increase as sort of bilateral trade also increases. Just to touch base on some of the resources that are available, and I'm sure we can share these slides after, but I think from our side we're very aware that for a lot of countries on the scheme, it's great to have the market access offer, but a key barrier is sort of finding a UK buyer and that sort of matchmaking element between UK and Tanzanian businesses. We've got some resources available online. So there's a UK importer database, which is the first link on the right of this slide. So you can kind of search for your product, either by commodity code or description, and there should be a list of UK companies that sort of buy this type of product. And it should have some contact details for you to sort of start the process of reaching out. We also have some programming, which I think I'll talk about in the next slide, in which the Trade Envoy also mentioned. So we fund some, under UK trade partnerships, we fund some programs that help SMEs to sort of develop their product and then come over to UK trade fairs to, again, hopefully find a UK buyer. We also produced a lot of digital guidance around the DCTS launch. So there's an interactive visualization tool which we recently updated as well, where you can kind of see, you can click on, if you type your product, you can see what the trade flows are between the UK and Tanzania, and you can see also competition, so for other countries in the region or global sort of UK imports in this product. So you can get a sense of where your product might be competitive. And there are also a lot of explainers linked to that, so like rules of origin deep dives, and also on trade standards, which I think, we're aware of being like a particular issue in agri sectors. So I've already kind of touched on this, but the UK government also invests a lot of ODA in Africa and also in Tanzania to sort of build the capacity of governments and businesses and support them to trade more. So I sit in a team next to sort of the Trade Centre of Expertise, and we offer a lot of support around developing standards institutes, so supporting institutions with testing facilities and offering business support as well with meeting trade standards. And then also other programs around sort of, making sort of trade more inclusive for women, etc. There are also some infrastructure, Africa-wide programs that support trade infrastructure as well. So stuff on, they're called sort of Trademark Africa. And there's also the Growth Gateway program, which aims to link UK investors and businesses with businesses and investors in Africa. So if any of that's helpful, I can share, again, with these slides, we can share some links to some of those resources. I think I already mentioned the UK Trade Partnerships program, and I think Trade Envoy mentioned it as well. So I won't touch too much on it, but just to say that, it was great this year to see some of the businesses that attended from Tanzania that were able to showcase their products in Source Fashion in London. And I think similarly, there were a few firms that also went to Ethiopia, I think towards the end of last year as well, on a similar sort of trade fair mission. Yeah, that was it for me. I'm very happy to take questions, but I think there's an allocated slot for it later in the event. But also to say, if you've got any questions about the scheme or any resources that I mentioned, please feel free to get in touch at that email. And sorry about the tech issues. I guess you can't see me, but I can see you.
We got you very well, Sabiha. Asante sana, thank you so much. I'm sure there'll be a couple of questions later, but thank you so much for a lot of clarity that you have provided of what the scheme is about and what are the opportunities existing. I think now it's time to invite from ITC, International Trade Center, Geneva, Senior Economist Cecilia Huser. Cecilia, if you can hear us. And I think first, thank you, ITC and yourself, specifically for the analytical work that you have done, looking at the data, trade data in Tanzania, especially between Tanzania and the UK, to see what you have achieved before, but also going forward, where are the opportunities. So I think it's time to give us a feel of what lies ahead of us, what are the opportunities. Cecilia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? See me? Yes? Looks like it.
We can hear and see you very well.
Great. We're off to a good start then. Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm very glad to be here to have this opportunity to show you some preliminary results from our study. I want to thank the organizers for this opportunity and all the people in attendance. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation. I think it's taking a second to load. You should be able to see it now. So I'm going to be talking about Tanzanian exports to the United Kingdom, in particular, an assessment of opportunities and requirements that we are doing at the International Trade Center. So, as my introduction said, I'm Cecilia Huser. I'm a senior economist at the International Trade Center. The International Trade Center is an agency of the United Nations and the World Trade Organization that focuses on trade for development. In this case, we are assessing opportunities for increasing exports from Tanzania to the United Kingdom. And let me just go through some of the preliminary results that we have so far. Let me start by taking stock of the situation in recent years. So data of recent years can vary a little bit, but on average, in the last 5 to 6 years, Tanzania exported just above $28 million to the UK. Those exports were mostly focused on a few products. Those products were mainly black tea, avocado, coffee, and a few others. These products were largely agricultural products with a limited extent of processing in them. Some of them were traditionally the largest exports, particularly black tea. Others, like avocados, showed more dynamism. But the takeaway is that the basis from which we're starting in considering trade from Tanzania to the UK is around 28 million in recent years. It is not that large. It's concentrated in a few products, and a lot of those products are unprocessed. So from that starting point, we wanted to assess so as we have been discussing, the preferences offered to Tanzanian exporters under DCTS can really put them at an equal footing or level playing field with other suppliers to the UK. The main suppliers to the UK are the EU, the US, and China, for example. They enjoy access to the UK with very low tariffs in general. So for Tanzania to have low tariffs is an important step in being competitive in the UK market. So the implementation of the DCTS can provide that opportunity. A second point that is also important happening also now is the ongoing implementation of the AFCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area. The more integrated African markets that are occurring under AFCFTA can indeed make African exporters more competitive because they can source more easily inputs from across African markets. Having a larger market can make them more competitive. So the ongoing implementation of AFCFTA can also make Tanzanian exporters more competitive in UK markets, particularly taking into account the point on extended accumulation that the previous speaker highlighted. So if Tanzanian exporters were to source inputs across Africa, they could still enjoy the preferences of DCTS when exporting to the UK. Another interesting point in terms of focusing on the UK now is that UK imports from Africa have become more processed in these recent years. So while in the case of around 60% of the goods shipped to the UK are processed. So this also shows a trend that Tanzania could leverage to some extent. Our last point is the issue of LDC status. So Tanzania met graduation criteria from LDC status for the first time a few weeks ago, beginning of March. This shows a first step on the path to graduating out of this category. And while the path to graduation is actually very long, it can take many years to graduate, things can change. This shows the importance of understanding all the different aspects related to DCTS. How does it work now for Tanzania as an LDC? How it could work if it were to graduate? And this is a bit of an evolving situation. So the point being that it's important to understand the rules of DCTS and to monitor the evolution of Tanzania itself in relation to this rules. So without further motivation, I think this is already this shows that it is a very timely topic when we go into the exercise that we run. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in terms of methodology, just to give you a brief taste of what the exercise is. We do have a method at ITC that was developed in-house to identify export opportunities that tries to make use of all the data that is available regarding trade globally. So we have an economic model that uses data on past trade, on tariffs, on GDP projections, geographic data, input-output matrices. So globally, for all countries, not only UK and Tanzania, but also all other competitors for all goods, we try to find a way to capture everything that this data can tell us. To give you a gist of it, we try to capture a lot of supply factors, so how much Tanzania could export of different goods. We try to capture demand factors, how much the UK would demand of certain goods, and we try to capture the ease of trade between and the UK. And this takes into account how trade has been between both countries in the past under previous tariff regimes and how it could be under the new tariff regime. So we try to estimate what exports could be by 2028. Why 2028? Because this would give Tanzanian exporters enough time to adapt to any sort of support policies that could be designed and implemented now. And also simply because we we try to project confidently the growth of competitors, the growth of demand in the UK, and this is the extent to which information is available. We do these estimations for existing products, so products that Tanzania already exports, whether that's already to the UK or to other markets. And we do as well an analysis of what new exports, new products Tanzania could start exporting. And in that case, what we assess is, are there enough inputs available in Tanzania or regionally? Does Tanzania show transformative capacity for those goods? And would those goods be demanded in the UK? We consider as well additional criteria, not only based on trade and tariff data, but we also try to consider which sectors would generate more employment, which sectors could have an environmental impact, etc. And there's a slides which I hope can be shared with you, where you could find further information about the sort of methodology that we're using. Having said that, let me go through some of the main findings of this methodology. So in terms of opportunities to increase exports to the UK, we focused only on semi-processed and processed goods, assuming that we would want Tanzanian exports to move to a higher processed, higher value-added segment of goods. And our calculations estimated that there is the potential to grow exports of semi-processed and processed goods to the UK by 7.5 million by 2028. And this is in around 90 products. So for 91 products, we found that 90 or 91 products that Tanzania is already exporting to the UK or to other destinations, we found that exports could increase by 7.5 million in the next few years. The chart shows us where that unrealized potential is in terms of sectors. To the right of the chart, to the left of the chart, you can see the sectors where the unrealized potential lies, and to the right you can see some examples of products in those sectors that show space for growth. This doesn't mean that these are necessarily the sectors of products or products that we would want to support. This is just the identification of space for growth in exports to the UK there. So we see that mineral products still holds a large unrealized export potential, but also apparel and textile, sea animal products, which actually refers to fisheries in the case of Tanzania. There are a few chemicals and so on and so forth. In terms of new products, we also identify 50 new semi-processed or processed products that Tanzania could start exporting to the UK, transforming local inputs. So in this case, we cannot say how much exports of those products would be, but we can say that Tanzania could be a competitive exporters of these goods to Tanzania. So in this chart, we see which sectors have new products that Tanzania could export successfully. For example, we find 2 products in horticulture, 4 products in vegetable products, where Tanzania shows large capacity to supply, to transform, and the UK has a high demand where Tanzania could compete. We have more detail on what those products would be. So, for example, for vegetable products, we are thinking of different types of oils, so coconut oil, groundnut oil, soybean oil. In horticulture, the products that we identify are dried or prepared or processed fruits, in particular peaches, pears, and that type of fruit. And while those are just the sectors and products that show potential to grow their exports to the UK, we also considered which of them, what their impact could be in terms of job creation. So when we consider job creation associated to exports, we don't think only of the jobs that would be created in the sector that increases its exports, but we also think what the job creation would be across the economy. So we have what we call direct job creation, jobs that are created in the exporting sector, indirect job creation, which are jobs that are created in the sectors that supply goods to that sector, and induced job creation, which is jobs that are created in the economy as a result of the increased activity of exports. So associated to the unrealized export potential that I mentioned earlier, we can identify that around 8,000 jobs could be created if that unrealized potential is materialized. So 2,000 jobs would be created in the sectors that have unrealized potential, if that potential is realized, and 1,000 would be created in sectors that supply inputs to those sectors. 47% of the jobs created would be for women, 27% for youth, and 27% would be high-earning positions. This is only based on increasing exports of products that Tanzania already exports to some extent. If additional exports of new products were to succeed as well, the ones that were identified as new products with chances to export to the UK, that would imply even more job creation. An important point associated to this is that the link between export growth and job creation varies between sectors. So not all sectors generate the same amount of jobs. So what we can see in this chart is that for the sectors for which we had unrealized export potential, the jobs that would be created, that is the height of the bars, differ across the sectors. But, for example, a sector like horticulture that has a lower unrealized export potential than a sector like minerals can generate as many jobs if that potential is realized. So what we can see here is that apparel and horticulture, for example, can generate a lot of direct jobs from a smaller increase of exports than other sectors. So they have a higher impact in terms of employment for a lower increase in exports. And this is something to be taken into account when support for different sectors is designed. So just not to go over my time, let me give you an overview of key results. So this is the sort of exercise that we run. So based on a model that tries to take into account all available trade data globally and tariff data globally, we assessed, and also taking into account employment generation, we assessed that some of the value chains that can and maybe should be prioritized are in agro-processing, apparel, and fisheries. And within those larger value chains, we identify specific products that have potential for growth. Some of the examples are listed there. So within agro-processing, some oils of groundnut, coconut, soybean, some fruit juices, and processing of legumes and fruit. In terms of apparel, definitely home textiles, but then some cotton garments and other textile products as well. And in fisheries, prepared fish and frozen fish. In all cases, we're referring to the semi-processed and processed version of these products. Now, the calculations that we run take into account the preferential tariffs of DCTS. So these opportunities that were identified were based on on trade flows, on estimations of what Tanzania could offer, what the UK could demand, and the tariffs under DCTS. But one point to keep in mind is that tariffs are not the only thing that could be a hurdle for competitive products that Tanzania could export. So looking beyond tariffs, we find non-tariff measures and procedural obstacles that can become hurdles to exporters. So ITC conducted a business service in Tanzania in 2013 and in 2019, so before the DCTS was implemented, that assessed what the non-tariff measures, how the non-tariff measures and how procedural obstacles were affecting Tanzanian exporters at the time. Of course, this has changed through time. Many initiatives and reforms undertaken by the government have eased some of these difficulties. Some of this progress is very clear, but some challenges remain. So the results that you can see in the charts show the data that we obtained in 2019-2020, so some of this may have changed already, but what you can see on the left chart is that for Tanzanian exporters, there were non-tariff measures domestically that they found challenging when exporting, largely the obtention of licenses and permits, certifications and inspection. And on the side of the UK regulations, so the sort of challenges they found already entering into the UK, the largest difficulty was related to certification at the time. And in terms of procedural obstacles, the reports show that delays in regulation and high fees was among the largest challenges. So the point of this being that while some of these challenges are being addressed already, these sort of challenges are also something that evolves and that shifts depending on regulation and conditions. So this is something to keep an eye on as well under DCTS. So what sort of licensing and what sort of certifications or requirements are becoming a challenge or can be a challenge under DCTS for Tanzanian exporters. As a last point, I want to mention a few actions ITC takes in supporting countries in situations like this in terms of realizing the export potential that is identified, and in particular tackling challenges related to non-tariff measures and procedural obstacles. We have deployed this sort of supporting efforts across Africa, in some cases across Tanzania as well, and these efforts are doing targeted business service to identify specific problems for specific sectors. We have done business matchmaking and investment promotion, this at a level of just automated tools where people can sign up and do business matchmaking, but also in terms of supporting attendance to fairs and such that can aid matchmaking with buyers. We do run capacity building on non-tariff measures and non-tariff measure tools to understand regulation. And in connection to that, we do prepare awareness raising and capacity building in DCTS and other agreements, and we trained on export quality management, which tends to be one of the most challenging hurdles for exporters, and a few other activities that we undertake to support priority sectors in general. In terms of where this project is going for us, we have finished a preliminary phase. Those are the results that you have seen, where we have identified the specific opportunities for export growth to the UK, and now we are undertaking a second stage where we analyze the specific challenges for those sectors in accessing the UK market some of these results will not be surprising or shocking to you. Basically, the sectors that we identify as having potential are things where Tanzania is already competitive, but what we're saying is that it can and probably should now move into more processed segments of the same value chains. And without having finished the second phase, we can also imagine that the main hurdles are related to things like SPS and TBT measures and certifications of different kinds. But with that, I'll finish. You can find more information in the links that you see there. Please feel free to reach out with any questions or comments that you have, and I'll be happy to hear your questions later, I think, in the Q&A section. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. Although you promised to share the slides, I could see quite a number of people taking photos of some specific slides. They're like they can't wait. How many are already into export business or seriously considering export, especially to the UK market? So quite a few. Wow, quite a few. Either you're already doing it or seriously considering doing that. But the devil is always in the details. Do you know that? The devil is always in the details. Now let's hear some of those devils. So the next session will be talking about agriculture standards and what does it take to export to the UK market. Now people are already excited. Now Rebecca Schneider and Petronila Mloe, I'm not sure how you have organized yourself, but please don't burst our bubble. We are already excited, so please, even if you do not have very amusing message about standards, but package it in a way that we look forward to going to hell, much as we know we have today. So, Rebecca, the floor is now to you. Tell us about agriculture standards, and we really want to export to the UK. What does it take? And then Petronila.
Thank you so much to everyone for having me today. And I hope that you can all hear and see me on the screen, as well as the slides that I've put up. It's a pleasure to be here. Just by way of introduction, my name is Rebecca Schneider. I am the UK's Agriculture, Food and Drink Attaché for Africa. I am currently based out of Nairobi, Kenya, but I cover all African countries to date, and I essentially am one of the leading voices to help both importers and exporters understand rules and regulations. So I hope that some of this that I present today will demystify a bit of the process in the first stage, which is getting you market access into the UK market, and then Petronella will take it forward about what happens when your goods actually land in the UK. So just a little bit of a recap, because I know some of our colleagues especially have joined us a bit late online, just to kind of understand what the DCTS is. So essentially, in a nutshell, as we've all heard here today, it provides duty-free and quota-free access across the UK market. And it's a great preferential trading scheme that you should all be taking use of, essentially, to gain access and send your products into the UK. So not only does it reduce the import cost of products from around the world, but it also means that you are able to trade more and bring your goods into the UK. That said, we do still ask that you must follow all rules of origin and applicable standards and regulatory requirements once that is the case. So, which is why when we talk about agricultural products, it's quite a headache to understand what all of those applicable standards and regulations are. So hopefully today we'll go through a little bit of that. First, I think we can't escape the B word, which is Brexit. For many of you, you saw as the UK left the European Union, And it's been a very big challenge to understand how the UK is now changing our rules in light of that. So the main headline is that since leaving the European Union, we have our own animal and plant health regulations. Going forward, we are going to implement a risk-based approach, maintaining all international standards and applying WTO sanitary and phytosanitary principles. And the focus now is protecting GB security, not EU security. And I just want to expand on that a little bit, because a lot of people come to me and say, well, the EU has implemented X regulation. Will the UK follow suit? Or on the opposite side, the EU has just reduced our MRL, our maximum residue limit, for X products. Will the UK accept that? And unfortunately, right now, or fortunately, whichever way you wish to see it, we have our own rules and regulations. And while many of those mirror the EU currently, that doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case. So I would say that it's really important that going forward, you really understand the changing system and understand where differences are now going to apply. For example, right now, a really good kind of showcase of this is on blueberries. I don't know if Tanzania has many blueberries, but blueberries has just gone to 100% phytosanitary checks when entering the UK market. Previously, it was at 5% for most countries. So that is just showcasing that right now there are changing guidance, and it's really important for everybody to go on gov.uk, understand UK legislation, and understand where those changes in the checks are happening. One of the great ways that you can do that, especially if you are getting confused, I understand that gov.uk is not the most user-friendly, is that we have a free growth gateway service. And the growth gateway, you can reach out to them and they will help give you guidance and advice. And I do hope that traders today take note of that, go home, look up the Growth Gateway and make use of it. It is a great program, it's free to use, and in some cases we can even get tailored advice in the language that you might need. So I would say please, please make use of that process. The other way is to really understand what this border target operating model includes, and a lot of that can be also found on gov.uk. Any changes in the future to our legislation or on sanitary and phytosanitary requirements are going to be risk-based, which means that actually over time, if countries have a really good track record, especially in bringing in their horticultural products or in their meat products or whatever it might be, their risk level will actually be reassessed from, every 6 months or whatever the timeline might be by the UK government, and actually then their risk profile, especially for checks, will actually decrease. If you have interceptions at a really high rate, then that actually will go up. So essentially what this is designed to be looking at rewarding countries that are doing a really good job of not having those interceptions, and the countries that are kind of doing more poorly, it's then said, okay, you're on notice, please do better. And while we're in kind of the infancy stages of this process right now, it is something for you to be aware of, and hopefully an incentive for traders to really work hard so that we can reduce those check rates. The other thing that the UK is looking to do is we are first going to launch a simplified and digitalized health certificates. That is going to start with the EU and then move to many other countries. I know many countries all over Africa already do digital EHCs. However, this is something that the UK is also going to be doing and hopefully speaking to your systems, which is really important. As well as we're also going to launch a trusted trader scheme. So if you would like any further details on how this operates, you can go on to gov.uk and really truly get into the weeds of it. But it would take way too long today to go through every aspect. I think moving on, just the most important thing that we can really do is help you boost your chances of using the developing countries trading scheme. And as we have just talked about, it's really important that you understand that UK situation post-EU exit, because what we don't want is traders to be caught out. That kind of switch and checks rates that I just mentioned is a really good example of that. So we want people to understand what the UK is doing and why. We will try to communicate this as most and often as possible with your authorities and kind of your like NPPO, for example, which will do plant health in your country. But it is also up to traders to be able to know what is going on so that they understand that. I would say that it's really also important that you understand where the UK is making announcements on any changes, because these actually will really benefit you. And I know I talk a lot about gov.uk, but it is a really good place to find out some of those really critical announcements. Just a really good example, which I think a lot of you today are going to be really excited to hear, is that just last week on gov.uk, we announced a 2-year tariff suspension on cut flowers. And I know Tanzania grows a lot of cut flowers and exports them. While you're probably sitting here saying, well, we've already got 0% access under DCTS, as many of you know, if any of you are flower farmers or exporters, most go through Rotterdam, and most will go through the big cut flower auctions. And that means that they lose their status and gain EU status before coming into the UK. What this does, the UK has just announced, it will actually mirror the DCTS. We wanted to give DCTS countries the best chance of landing their product in the UK with lowering costs, not only to exporters, but also to increase trade, drive investment, and create jobs in Tanzania. So I'm really proud to say that that is something that we're doing, and that's going to be applicable for the next 2 years. But the only way you would know about that, whether it's through UK comms, is through actually going to gov.uk. And so I'm hoping that that gives you a good enough boost to go there. The next point is really that the exporter should really work with the UK importer to understand the key requirements and processes, and hopefully that's very clear. And when it comes to plants especially, you know, it is about ensuring the paperwork is correct before export, ensuring that any testing is done, making sure it fits those international standards and phytosanitary measures. One of the biggest things that I'm sure Petronella is going to talk about later today is that we really need to ensure that the labeling is correct. Any boxes, anything that you have needs to have the proper labeling, making it easy for the person on the ground to identify the contents of the imported material. And also, one of the key things here is to use the Latin botanical name. We really see that quite often. Sometimes other countries will have different product names. And if we're not using that botanical name, it becomes really hard for people on the ground to understand what's actually in that consignment. And then, of course, we also want to make sure that the paperwork actually matches what's in the consignment and making sure that the packing list and the invoice match. So I would just say that's a really easy fix, but it's something just to make note of. Then it comes down to actually market access. So for live animal and animal products, your country must have approval to export that commodity to Great Britain. If you have not done that, that is the next step that we will talk about here on the presentation. So, and then if it needs an establishment, you must actually then get your establishment verified with the UK government, and it must be held on our lists. So if you want to export from that. I have listed and given some links about making sure that you check the tropical diseases and how to notify the UK government of your imports. And if you need access to where you can find the export health certificates, we've also got a link for those as well so that you can easily find them. And I know that my slides are going to be disseminated after the presentation. Now, moving on to market access. So in a nutshell, what we need to ask our main kind of thesis question is this product regulated in the United Kingdom? So if it is unregulated, you have no controls, feel free to send us your product. no problem. Anything kind of 2 to 5 on that list is a maybe. So where you need to check is again on gov.uk. If it's regulated with no special requirements, just make sure your country's on the list. If it's regulated with special requirements, again, just make sure that you're meeting those requirements and making sure that you're visiting kind of UK legislation to understand what they are, or talking to DEFRA or the Food Standards Agency to make sure that you know what those are. And then if it's prohibited pending a risk assessment, you will need to apply for market access. And the UK will do a risk assessment or an audit and then decide whether that is granted. And then if it's prohibited pending derogation, you also, again, need to apply for that market access. We have to introduce a derogation, and that is usually very time limited. So for any of those categories, 2 to 5 on that sheet, you will be it will be necessary to have a phytosanitary certificate. And so it's really important that you know how to fill those out, where to find them, and that your trader or your exporter knows how to do that. But I've got great news that I want to share with you. There are products that are deregulated, and these are very common products. So for example, we've got a lot of fruit on there. We have got cotton balls. We've got curry, banana and plantain, mango, passion fruit, guava, all kind of great products. And one of the things that I know that Tanzania produces a lot of, but isn't on this list, I just wanted to talk to it really quickly, is on cashew nut. So for example, cashew is really interesting because if a cashew is sent to the UK and it is fresh, whole, not shelled, not peeled, and for sowing, that means that it will need a phytosanitary certificate. However, if you are planning to process your cashew and send it to the UK, say it's intended for human consumption, you do not need a phytosanitary certificate. And that just kind of shows you kind of the difference of the rules, but also good news for the processing industry if you are able to do that and then send it to the UK. That said, even if phytosanitary certificates are not needed on a lot of these products, you must still meet kind of the food safety rules. So for example, on the cashews that I just talked about, you are still going to have to make sure that the maximum residue limits, the MRLs on those cashews, say for example on banned pesticides, are not done. So essentially you can't have the testing needs to be within the acceptable limit for human consumption. So similar for a lot of products, you still have to meet other rules and regulations, but it is actually without a phytosanitary certificate. Just a really quick few words on certificates. Please make sure that if you're trying to send us rooted plants, you know that most of these are actually going to be banned, so do pay attention to them. Most plants and fruits and some cut flowers will have some controlled eligibility, and again, it's really helpful if you talk to the plant experts in DEFRA before you send us those products. And then again, on cut flowers, fruits, and most vegetables, some of the things, the products that I didn't mention in that big list on the previous slide, you will still need a phyto, so please, again, think about that. And then, a phytosanitary certificate actually goes beyond food. So some types of wood packaging, anything that could have soil in it, you still need a phytosanitary certificate. So just make sure of that when you're packing or when you have wood packaging, or crates essentially, or cartons. And then when it comes to animal products, again, we must have kind of an export health certificate and country approval and establishment authorization. So again, that's something that you would need to work with the UK government to achieve. And I'm just going to actually walk you through a little bit of what that process looks like. So essentially, here's some quick guidance on exports of products of animal origin. So as we talked about, it must be approved. You must have an authorized establishment listing, which means we will notify certain actual physical factories or locations to be able to send us meat. only your competent authority in your exporting country can apply. So obviously it needs to be government to government talking about this. And your government can actually email the UK Assurance Office and do that really neatly if they're interested. I will also note that this also applies for honey. So again, when we're thinking of products of animal origin, it's not just beef, lamb, chicken. It is aquaculture as well, and honey. And I know that that is really important because a lot of African countries do like to try to export and send us honey. And then any new market access request needs to be carefully considered, and it might be that we have to do an audit or a risk assessment to do that before you receive that. And then just really quickly to walk you through the process, if your host government wants to say, I don't know, get fish aquaculture market access, what they would do is they would email our UK Assurance Office. We would note receipt of that. We would then commission a study that your government would undertake. We would then assess what the residue control plans are for that country, for Tanzania. We would then inform and request any additional information from Tanzania. We would do another review, usually a desk-based or an audit, and then we would recommend the outcome, and then market access would be granted. And as you can see from that process, it's not a short process, it's actually quite lengthy. So while I would love to say, you know, we're going to open the markets very quickly, it does mean that it's actually quite a lengthy process. And if you have a specific drive to get Tanzania to send a certain animal product to the UK, I would push them now rather than later, given that the process can take so long. And then just really quickly wrapping up, I really want to leave you with as much information as possible, which is why it's so important to have contact details. I think sometimes the UK government can be a bit of a black box, especially when it comes to DEFRA, which is our Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, or our Food Standards Agency. So where you have any queries about sanitary and phytosanitary products, I've given you the contact details as well as our plant health specific hotline. When it comes to food, so for example, those MRLs I talked about, and you want to know what the maximum residue limits are, please talk to the Food Standards Agency, and they also have a helpline. And then we can also have a specific UK NPPO plant health mailbox, and they can talk to anything to do with plant health. And then if you want to talk, want to have kind of our countries talk about competent authority to competent authority about getting market access, we then do that through the UK Assurance Office. So just to kind of recap, I hope that was really useful. We've talked a lot about how to get access into the UK market, but now it's actually over to Petronella to discuss then what happens when food lands at a UK port. And I hope I can turn it over to her and we can do questions in just a minute. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Excellent. Again, I saw some pictures or photos being taken. Actually, I have a mango tree and a coconut tree at home, and I'm eating them carelessly. I didn't know that I can actually export. We have thousands and thousands. I could see my brother Ephraim also getting excited. So thanks a lot. I think that was good. Now, we promised you a 2-hour session, but you know we had technological glitches at the beginning. So I humbly request if you can allow us to extend the session by a half an hour to 12:30. Do I get a yes? Not a resounding yes. I want to hear a resounding yes. So Petronella is going to speak for about 10 minutes, and then we go into Q&A, and then we will invite 2-3 speakers for short closing session. Asanteni sana. So karibu Petronella.
Asante sana. Habari za mchana. Naitwa Petronella Mloe. Sorry. The microphone. Okay. My name is Petronella Mloe. Nafanya kazi serikali ya Uingereza kama Consultant Environmental Health Officer, na nimefanya kwa zaidi ya miaka 15 na serikali kusaidia vyakula vinavyoingia kutoka nchi mbalimbali. Okay, I'm going to speak in English then. Okay, I've been told about the language. I thought I should speak Swahili to make it easier. because I'm Tanzanian, but I'm going to speak in Swahili, in English, to make to save time, okay? My name is Petronella, and I'm environmental health practitioner working with local governments as consultant in different local authorities, and I'm based in London. Initially, I was based in Board of Control Posts, where the goods comes in from every country in the world. And lately, I've been working with inland local authorities. So my presentation today is to talk about the implementation of traceability systems for Tanzanian goods, for Tanzanian food products. This will include product of animal origin, vyakula vyote vya wanyamanyama, for instance, honey, meat, dairy products, or fisheries products. And also, I'm going to talk about food, none of animal origin, kama fruits and veg, spices. So I'm going to touch base what happens in inland as well as at port health. So to begin with, first slide, please. Yeah, so as you can see on the picture, this is the port authority. That's where the goods comes in. And these are these are the containers, comes as per numbers. You can see the numbers above. This is how it shows. And our facilities is very nice and clean to avoid any kind of cross-contamination. And we have different equipment in there, like X-ray machines, thermometers. We have got scales to allow us, we have got code rooms to allow us to carry out different checks that are relevant to ensure that the food or the consignment coming from all over the country complies with the UK regulations. So, so at this point is the first line of defense. It's a port health authority. It's a first point of defense. What do I mean? This is the point where the manifest is received from different airlines, from different shipping lines. We know exactly what to expect in terms of the consignment. What containers which container contains what. So we will have shipping documents, like commercial documents, we will receive from the manifest, from the shipping line. What is the shipping documents or commercial documents? In Ezeikawa, this will be like airway bill. If the product came with the air, or bill of lading, invoices, parking lists, as well as CHED in clearance health entry documents, as well as health certificates. And this helps us to understand what to expect and to prepare the officers who will be available at the Board of Control Post. And remember that each individual product can come in different ports where the product or hazard risk has been assessed. For instance, let's say you're bringing honey or you're bringing product of animal origin. There are ports which are assigned relevant for those kind of products. Not every port will receive every product. Hence, it's very important that at this point we receive pre-notification of the product that are coming from any country, including Tanzania, to ensure that the officers, like our fish inspectors, to be available if there are fisheries products, the vet officers to be available, etc., etc. Next slide, please. So what do we do at the Port Health Authority? There are major three hierarchical, or in Swahili we can say mtiririko, so hierarchy of checks that we do. The first thing, remember, I said we check documentation, and my colleague did touch base on that. Documentation that arrives with a shipping line, the manifest. So we check that, and then in combination, the second thing we check is identification of the product, because that's the point where the container arrives, isn't it? So you have received manifest, you want to verify, is the product in the container ties with the products that have been stated in the invoices or in the airway bill. So this is the point where we check the documents, identification, and as well as physical checks. So you can't do one and leave the other. Both the three are done at this point. So the documentation, identity check, and physical checks. I'm going to go in detail on the next slide. Next slide, please. So what is done in terms of documentation? Remember, there are products which are high risk. Products of high risk is like all the products of animal origin. We call it product are high risk, are categorized as high risk. And there are those which have been categorized as high risk, but they are not product of animal origin. They are based on plant-based products. For instance, tuna mimea kama milungi in Swahili, kava, and also we have jelly, sweet gels. Those are not product of animal origin. We have different which are in the list. So we have got a website down here, you can see, from Food Standard Agency's website, which gives us the guidance, what kind of products are coming through the country and what risk it can pose in the country. So let's say you are transporting avocado, so we can check, is avocado among the listed country, is Tanzania is among the listed country, high-risk food of this kind of product is in high-risk category, tunaangalia. If we just in case, if it's not, then we carry out with other checks. So we have, let's say, in terms of product of animal origin, what do we check? Product of animal origin, vitu tunavyoangalia, or what we check is, first, is to ensure that the country that is importing has been approved. So there is a residue plan which is submitted. Tanzania is already on the list, so you are fine with that. And another thing we check is country code. Once the country has been approved, then you get a country code which will accompany on your documentation. And another thing is establishment approval. So at this point, product of animal origin, luckily I've got one of the importer here, gave me honey, and is importing to UK. Unfortunately, there is no approval number, but I've got cheese from KLM, the airline that I came with, and there's a mark. I wish if you can show the audience for me, which is called approval number, that is given to, if you can show for me, please. Okay, there is, so the approval number is identification that your industry or your establishment is complying with food safety manufacturing standards under EC 853/2004 regulations on the product of animal origin. So tunaangalia hiyo, we check on that. And another thing that we check is health certificate and commercial documents, and so those are the ones that we check in terms of product of animal origin. And in terms of food none of animal origin, what do we check? We check on commercial documents, and analytical tests, health certificates, and all, as well as I said, categories, whether they are registered in the high-risk ban of the, from the Food Standard Agency website. If we click on this website, it will link us on where we can go through and we can see exactly which country and what product has been banned or is just about to be banned or in which category it is. Well, it links us directly to the Food Standard Agency, and it tells us which products and which to look for. So that's one. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next thing I said on the hierarchy of checking, we check identity. So I have received the documentation from Manifest, and it tells us the invoice, it talks about the bill of lading, it talks about the airway bill, packing list. So at this point, it's the time for me to go and see physically the container. The first thing is I'm telling the information on the invoices, the documents. Okay, it's saying it has come with MSQU or MSQ, whatever container number, so I check the container number. Is it tallying with what I'm seeing in front of me? Yes. We check on the tags. Is the tags tempered? Is anything been taken out or whatever? So we check on that. And another thing is we open the container, we check. If the consignment, let's say you have sent parachichis from Tanzania, and I go in there, you said you have 20 packages of parachichi, and I'm looking on consignment on my document, and I'm looking on the boxes if there are 20. So it's like verification of what is written on paper and seeing physically what is in there, okay? And this is the point where my colleague said labeling. Labeling is very crucial. If you have product of animal origin at Board of Control Post, that's where we check the approval number, approval establishment, if it is tallying with the documents that you have, the packaging, if it has got the approval number. This is very crucial, because without which, then there will be some enforcement procedures that we will take forward, okay? So can we go to the next one, please? Okay, so we have checks on document, we have checked on identity. The last thing is physical checks. So in front of us, we have got a box of parachichi. What do we do? Basically, this is the point where we use our organoleptic characteristics. Organoleptic means the eyes, our ears, touch, the feel. So I'm looking in the box. Let's say it's fish from Mwanza. And if we smelt it, because the legislation under EC 853/2004, wanasema kwamba, it says that it has to come at the temperature closer to the freezing ice. Let's say you brought a freezing product, which is not complying with that. So my eyes will tell, oh, it's melting. Oh, something is wrong here. So this is where the point that I'll say, okay, I'm going to do my graduated approach. We're going to take some samples. And another thing, oh, sorry. Sorry, sir. Okay, so I'm going to do the sampling, and we're going to have to look into it by checking where does the product come from. Which transport has it been used to ship that product, as well as check the temperature, the packaging, the labeling. Next slide, please, sir. So, what are the tests done in order to ensure the product complies with EU or United Kingdom regulations? For instance, if we receive honey from Tanzania, yeah, we check on compositional. Compositional, it means honey comes from apiary, comes from bees, right? And it makes natural sugars from nectar. And if you use heat for extracting the honey, it means you are changing the simple sugars which are contained into honey into malt sugars. Let's say maltase into maltose, etc., etc. So this may affect the quality or the name of the honey. So they check, it will be maybe added sugars. So we check on added sugars, composition, as well as we check any contaminants. Come on, if you used the kitamba and the cloth from kitamba has put the manyoya, the maganda to this, and this is where we check. So, and another thing in terms of fruits and veg, we check a pesticide residue. There is minimum residue levels that is allowed to enter into food chain, and my colleague Rebecca has touched base on that. So, another thing is mvundofundo. Mvundofundo is aflatoxins. We have different chemicals that we check. Aflatoxins we check ochratoxin A, we check ochratoxin B. These are also crucial because of the way how the product has been dried out or has been shipped or prepared. Next slide, please, sir. So what happened if the product has not complied with food safety and standards of UK? Yeah, the first thing is we give all the options to the importer or the person who is responsible to import that product in the UK. So the product can be first destroyed or can be redispatched, or we can give the option to be degraded, or it can be treated if we suspect there is a risk to the potential risk to health of the community. So basically, how does it work? Let's say you brought peanuts from Tanzania, and we find out it's not, it hasn't complied with food safety regulations. So we give you the options whether you want it to go back to Tanzania or you want to be destroyed, or another thing is we can give you the option to be degraded to be used as a feed of one more region. And we serve notices to the person responsible, the importer, and the appeal is at magistrate court. And once we go to magistrate court, then we will save you the court, the recovery cost as well. In the next slide, please. I want to talk to you what we do in the inland, wilayani. So the product has come to the Board of Control Post. We have warehouses like bondage warehouses, and as well as, yeah, the last slide, please. Yeah, we have a duty to carry out inspections, monitoring visits, surveillance, sampling, as well as verification visits. This is our role. And during our duty, we do sometimes come across some products which have not been labeled properly. We have different regulations that we enforce, like Food Information Regulation sets the guidance on, Food Information Regulation 2014 and EC 1169-2011, which sets guidance on labeling of the products that we follow. And for genetically modified food, we have guidance as well, like we use genetically modified food regulations to ensure that the food is complying with food safety standards. Next slide, please. So I would like to conclude because the time is not our friend, and I can tell you now I'm more than happy to answer more questions after this. Just to let you know that at Port Health Authority is the first point of defense. That's where the pre-notification, the documentation, the identity and physical check is being done. But I come to the inland or huko kwenye mawilaya, that's where the monitoring, the surveillance, the audits, the inspections, sampling, that's where all these duties are carried. And officers have got powers. We have been given powers to seize, to detain, to destroy, based on legislative. But we communicate, we don't use policing, hey. No, we go by law and we take time based on the legislation. Asanteni sana.
Thank you so much, Petronila. I hope goods from Tanzania are not going to be seized, destroyed, etc. And I'm sorry for putting a bit of pressure on you because time is. Now allow me to use my discretion to reorganize the timetable slightly and invite the British High Commissioner to Tanzania, His Excellency David Conker, now because he has an emergency and he has to leave before 12:30. So if David is online, I hope technology will allow David to join now for 2-3 minutes of his remarks. And thank you so much, David, for facilitation, of course, and the team from British High Commissioner. I saw David for a minute. Yes, here you are. Karibu sana.
Thank you. Can I just check, John, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. So, look, I'll be brief, and thank you for accommodating me in a real nice schedule at the end. Huge thank you to everyone for joining this event. I think it's been a great event. I've learned a lot. The presentations have been very clear and excellent. A lot of really useful information in those. And thank you to you, Maheshwari, John Alanga, for navigating us through and persevering, encouraging us to persevere with the technology, which has just got better and better as the event has progressed. So, look, I'll keep it brief. We've all heard about the opportunity. You've heard from the experts. We've about the gap, this huge gap, 24 million pounds or thereabouts between, what's being exported from Tanzania compared with the billions that are being pounds worth of exports from South Africa and Nigeria. We've got to close that gap. We've heard about the generosity of the scheme, the rules of origin being crucial. We've heard about the UK's commitment to facilitate through providing information and enabling as many of you as possible to engage with the issues. And we've had some great slides, very rich in information. I would hope that we can get those slides translated into Kiswahili as soon as possible. And we've heard about some of the sectors of interest, as well as the sort of processes that would need to be followed. And I was particularly pleased to hear about textiles. The tie I'm wearing today is Tanzanian made, and I'm very proud of this tie. And I see no reason why products of this kind cannot be exported and sold in the UK. I'll be delighted to see that happen. And lastly, we've heard and picked up a lot of energy enthusiasm from the Minister, Kajaji, from the ambassadors, including Lord Wilby. So my three kind of key words to finish are, let's do this. Let's seize the moment. But mwisho ningependa kusema maneno machache kwa Kiswahili. Ninaamini kubwa sana kwamba pamoja tutaweza kufikia ongezeko kubwa sana la biashara kati ya Tanzania na Uingereza. Na ninafikiri kwamba sasa ni wakati wa kufanya hivi. Kwanza tuna programu nzuri sana ya DCTS. Pili, Tuna utafiti mzuri sana kutoka kwa ICT wa kutuongoza. Pia tuna mabalozi wazuri sana, Mheshimiwa Karuki, Mheshimiwa Olanga, Mheshimiwa Wome. Na mwisho ningesema kwamba Tanzania ndio ina bidhaa ambazo Uingereza inataka kununua. Kwa hivyo ujumbe wangu ni maneno matatu tu. Basi tufanya hivi. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for bragging with your Kiswahili. But unfortunately, by the time they get to do this, within no time you'll be invited to a farewell party. So I hope that won't happen. And why do I stress myself talking to you in English when I meet you? If you can, kama unaweza kaongea Kiswahili kizuri kama hiki. Sisi wengine Kiingereza cha St. Kayumba hiki. Okay, so thanks a lot. Asante sana, David. I think that has been excellent, and thank you for the commitment to continue collaboration to ensure we increase the values and the level and the volumes of trade between Tanzania and the UK. Now, time is rushing. Just to alert you, after this 2 hours or so session, Petronella is still going to be around. For now, the nitty-gritties, if you want to ask more details. I also know another colleague, David, is also going to be around. He's an importer into the UK, although his disappointment is he has not been able to import from Tanzania into the UK. He's importing from some of the neighboring countries, so he'll also be around to tell us what it takes. So those nitty-gritties of those who really want to roll up their sleeves and start exporting to the UK. NMB is going to be around because I know working capital is also an issue. What can a bank like NMB help you? For now, quickly Q&A. If you have a question or questions, please one question per person. Make it brief, succinct, short, and clear. A lady, yes. Okay, so we have to have mobile microphone. Who can help us?
Hello, my name is Marina Rohinda. I have a quick question. Nitaongea Kiswahili or English anyway.
No.
What if
the role for translation to make it easier, if you do it in Kiswahili, do it straight out in Kiswahili, or if you do it in English, do it straight out in English.
Okay, so okay, I have a quick question. If you're a Tanzanian based in the UK and you want to export, are the rules exactly the same, or are they like different rules?
Okay.
Only that, yeah. Asante.
Who is writing down the questions? And who is going to respond to the questions? I wish you luck.
Thank you. My name is Kelvin Raymond from Tanzania Horticultural Association. I'd like to appreciate for the very informative presentation you have received. I have a question on the third and fourth presentation. Much as they've touched on the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, but I have not heard about the private standards which exporters have to comply with. For instance, in EU, I know exporters have to comply with Global Gap certifications, BRC for pack houses, so we'd like to learn whether it will still be the same for UK market. Asante.
Thank you so much, Taha, Kelvin. Taha, excellent. Thank you for the support. Yes, the gentleman over there. Yes. And asante.
Yeah, asante. Mimi ninaitwa Frank Ntabariba. Ninaishi Uingereza na ninafanya biashara zangu Uingereza na Tanzania. Nilitaka kukisema kutokana na maelezo ambayo yametolewa hapo, kuna jambo moja ambalo nilipenda tusaidiwe. Na nafikiri wajibu hoja watatusaidia. Kuna bidhaa nyingi ambazo zinaletwa Uingereza kutokea Kenya, lakini zinatoka Tanzania zinakwenda Kenya, kutoka Kenya zinaletwa Uingereza na wanasema zinatokea Kenya. Kwenye kucontrol hiki tunachokifanya cha kutafuta watu wengine wafanye biashara kutoka Tanzania kwenda Uingereza, hilo wingu lililoko hapo katikati la bidhaa za Tanzania zinatoka hapa zinachukuliwa zinakwenda Kenya, Kenya ndipo zinafika Uingereza, sijui wanalifanyaje hilo.
Ungependa lifanywaje? Chap chap.
kuwepo na udhibiti wa kutosha
Kwamba zisiende Kenya.
Zisiende Kenya.
Okay, haya.
Hilo.
Kusikia. Asante. Swali jingine? Hapo.
Asante sana. Mimi naitwa Alphonse Matata.
Attention please, and don't mind me, sometimes I become a bit careless. Sorry. Attention please. We only have about 10 minutes to the allocated time.
Mimi naitwa Alphonse Matata, natokea kampuni ya Malaika. Sisi tunajishughulisha na uuzaji wa asali. Sasa nitajikita kwenye biashara ya asali na nyuki kutokana na uzoefu wangu. Hotuba ya waziri inaonyesha kwamba Tanzania tunauza kidogo Uingereza, lakini wao wananunua kwa wingi. Hii ni kwa sababu ya kitu kinaitwa trade barriers. Tunapozungumza hapa unakuta wanaongea vitu vizuri, lakini unapoenda kwenye
wako trade barriers ni zipi?
Yani ni hizo ni kuhusiana na certification. Kwa mfano
okay.
TBS wao baadhi ya kampuni huko Uingereza hawapokei COA kutoka TBS. Wanakuelekeza kwamba nenda QCI ambayo iko Ujerumani, maabara ya Ujerumani, au Intertech.
Product gani?
Asali na pamoja na nyingine.
Okay.
Sasa ukiangalia TBS imechukua tuzo ya Afrika. Sasa hapo wao wanananili. Sasa hizo ni siasa nyingi ambazo
hatustaki. Sasa najaribu, unajua kuna facts, kuna swali na kuna maoni. Uliza swali.
Sasa swali langu ni kwamba ni sheria gani ambayo inaweza ikatufavor sisi ku open gate, trade gate kwa huko UK? Kwa sababu imekuwa ni yani hizo trade barriers imekuwa na document nyingi sana ambazo ukizicompile unaweza ukafikiri labda ni Bible hivi. Kwa hiyo zimekuwa ni nyingi kiasi kwamba watu wengi wanashindwa kupenetrate kuingia huko Uingereza. Kwa mimi akija Muingereza, akija na mtu kutoka Oman, mimi nitaanza kumsikiliza mtu kutoka Oman, kwa sababu huko kidogo angalau hakuna vizingiti vikubwa kama hivi ambavyo vinafanywa na nchi za Ulaya.
Kwa hiyo umesusa?
Sijasusa, yani
okay, swali jingine tumekuelewa. Nataka tuchukue maswali mengi.
Yani maoni ambayo
tumekuelewa,
ambao wao wanatakiwa wachukue, waende waone kwamba watu wanashindwa ku export kutokana na hizo TBT ambazo wao wanaziweka. Sasa kwa mfano issue ya TBS, wao kukataa ripoti ya TBS, wakati TBS ndio sisi tunaoitegemea. Yani ni siasa ambazo hazina mantiki yoyote.
Ni sawa, tunakusikia. Swali jingine?
Asante.
Jamani, hasira. Karibu.
Asante. Jina langu naitwa Dominic Haule, natokea taasisi inaitwa Decision Foundation. Sisi ni washauri kwenye biashara na uwekezaji. Ndugu zangu, balozi amesema bidhaa za Tanzania zinahitajika Uingereza. Mimi ningeshauri tusiwe watu wa mikutano tu, tufanye maazimio leo. Ningeomba TanTrade na NMB tutengeneze timu ndogo. Mimi kama kesho mtu akihitaji shamba hata ekari 5,000 naweza nikampa access. Waingereza wanahitaji maharage. Kwa nini tusiwe na sehemu moja ekari 1,000? Yoyote ambaye anaweza akaja kulima maharage pale mahala, tukaweka tukalima, tukasimamia ubora, tuka export. Wenzetu wa Kenya wanafanya kwa pamoja. Sisi tunajifanya wa jamaa, lakini sisi sio wa jamaa. Wa Kenya ndio wa jamaa. Rafiki yangu anasimamia shamba lina wakulima 3,000. Kila wiki 2 anajaza ndege. Kwa mimi ningeomba tu NMB naweza nikaleta wazo au concept note 1 page ili wale watakaokuwa tayari tufanye kwa pamoja.
Asante sana Dominic. Excellent kwa maoni. NMB? Sawa,
habari za asubuhi. Ni mchana sasa, sio? But we have not taken our lunch.
Yes, yes.
Okay, mine is not a question but a suggestion. Because Petronella mentioned that they are first line of defense for the importing country. And I think is an opportunity for us to have their offices in Tanzania so that exporters actually get the service here before their goods actually reach in the UK.
Asante, thanks a lot. There are people almost raising hands in protest. Please choose one of you to I think there are 3. Naomba tuwe kwa kifupi.
Asante. Kwa jina naitwa Omar Musa Mkwarula, ni mkurugenzi wa kampuni ya Gahunda Company Limited. Kwanza binafsi nishukuru mafunzo haya. Mara nyingi tumekuwa tukiona Watanzania tunafanya importation kuliko export. Mimi jambo langu ni moja, tuna bidhaa nyingi Tanzania ambazo tunaweza ku-export. Tunaomba contact za hao buyers tuweze kuwasiliana nao, tuweze kufanya hizo importation.
Asante sana.
Tuko tayari kufuata hizo procedures na regulations zinazotakiwa. Asante.
Asante sana. I like that attitude. Kuna maswali naambiwa yako online, if somebody can be sending them on my WhatsApp message, otherwise I will not be doing justice kwa wale. Hey brother.
Hello.
Yes.
Unafanya kazi?
Yes.
Asante. Mimi naitwa Anders Peter Holman. Kwa na swali moja tu muhimu. Baada hapa tunaenda wapi?
What next?
Maana tuna maswali na tumeona vitu sheria na vitu vingi vya kufuatilia, lakini swala kwamba tunataka kutekeleza tunaenda wapi?
Asante. Wewe ungeshauri twende wapi?
Malimu ya kwenda, maana tutatoka hapa tutakuwa kama vifaranga tu.
Asante. Ungeshauri twende wapi?
Hiyo sio swala yangu, ni swala ya kwenda serikali au taasisi au sehemu yote tunaenda wapi?
Asante sana. Lady hapa. Hapo na ningependa wale ambao tayari they either wana export kwenda Uingereza au wana hamu kwamba tuko tayari kuanza kesho.
Jina langu naitwa Margaret Maina, mkurugenzi kutoka Maina Pendeza Products. Kwanza ni shukrani nyingi sana kwa serikali yangu ya Tanzania pamoja na UK kwa ujumla. Moja kwa moja niseme kwamba naona ni maswali mengi, lakini kama tungeweka katika moja ni kwamba lengo ni kwamba utaratibu na ukaguzi wa
urasimishaji na ukaguzi. Tunakusikia.
Utaratibu ufanyike serikali yangu pamoja na mambo yote, ili Kenya wasichukue bidhaa zetu na kuuza, sisi wenyewe tuuze. Basi ukaguzi na alama zinazotakiwa zichukuliwe kutoka huku, lakini pia tuangalie wale walio chini. Watu wengi wana bidhaa lakini utaratibu hawajui, na tunashukuru kupata leo, lakini itolewe uwezeshaji kwa wingi na utaratibu ufanyike. Na munga mkono baba aliyesema tutengeneze hata kikundi kidogo ambaye itaweza kufanya mambo kwa level yao na ifike level inafuata. Asante sana.
Asante sana. Engineer Salema. Wewe ni engineer na wewe? I was pointing the engineer behind you. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Kwanza niwapongeze na kuwashukuru, na kwa kweli imetufungua macho. Tulitamani sana kusikia hili jambo. Mimi naomba niungane mkono moja kwa moja na aliyetoka pale kutoka Maenge. Hebu tuweke vision kwamba sasa hivi Tanzania na dunia imefunguka. Sasa tunachagua mazao gani? Watu gani tuko tayari? Tumeweka infrastructure gani kupitia organizations zetu na serikali yetu? Kwa mfano, kuanzia usafirishaji, kwa sababu unajua msiseme tu Kenya, ni kwa sababu Kenya wameweka mifumo rahisi ya ndege zao kusafirisha mazao na kufikisha nchi husika bila problem. Sisi kuna watu samaki zinaoza bandarini. Umeona? Kwa sisi tunatakiwa tufike wakati tukubaliane. Tumechagua vitu labda viwili vitatu kama nchi. Tunatembea na hivyo vitu, tunaenda kuweka infrastructure. Tuna uwezo wa kufanya investment ya infrastructure kwenye mashamba yetu. Kuweka irrigation systems, hizo ni infrastructures. Hizo irrigation system tuzilize kwa watu, kwa sababu sisi tuko tayari kukaa shambani. Some of us we are flexible, we have got youth, tuna wanawake, tuna vikundi, tuna NGOs ambazo ziko tayari. Kwa mimi naomba, nimefurahi sana leo kwa sababu tayari tuna Mtanzania mwenzetu amezungumza vizuri sana, Petronia yuko kwenye center point. Tumtumie huyo na system, na balozi wetu na waziri wetu ni makini.
Asante.
Tuna uwezo wa kufanya kitu kutoka hapa tukaanza implementation. Kwa naomba tuende kwenye implementation kiongozi wangu.
Nakushukuru, asante sana.
Thank you very much.
That's a good motive. Kutoka online kuna Nimepata baadhi ya maswali. Kuna Engineer Esther Nkuba anauliza kama if spices and cereals are eligible for UK export under DCTS. Again, Esther, what does it mean talking about prepared products in the export of top products eligible for DCTS? And then Anastasia, I'm Tanzanian based in the UK who sell goods from Tanzania here in London. It's very difficult in logistics and transport. How does this scheme solve this issue? It's very expensive in transportation. Number kule mwisho, yeah, that gentleman with glasses. I have to do pick and choose. I'm sure sitaweza kuchukua maswali yote.
Mimi naitwa Albert Kamala, mjasiriamali mkulima mdogo kutoka Moshi. Nilitaka mimi nisikia kuhusu hii facility ambayo tumesoma inatolewa na United Kingdom Export Finance kwa maana ya guarantee masuala ya pesa. Asante.
So hiyo ni okay, labda tutazungumza baadaye. Lakini kulikuwa kuna semina kama wiki 3 iliyopita au mwezi maalum kwa ajili ya UK Export Finance ambaye tulitumia pia masaa 2 kuzungumzia kitu hicho. Mikono mitatu ya mwisho. Watu ambao wanasema nisipouliza nitajinyonga. If I don't ask a question, I'm going to hang myself.
Asante sana. Kwa jina naitwa Professor Dorcas Emmanuel, ni mkurugenzi wa kampuni ya Dokin Organic Farming. Ni Mtanzania na ni mzalendo. Kipekee nichukue nafasi hii kumshukuru Mungu, lakini nimshukuru sana Mama Samia ametufungulia milango, na nishukuru pia ubalozi wa Tanzania kule UK, na nimshukuru balozi wangu ambaye pia ni mdau wetu wa bidhaa zetu. Ni ombi na ni swali. Swali langu nalielekeza NMB Bank. Wameka bango zuri pale. Dokin Organic tuna ekari zaidi ya hekta 1500, karibu na ekari 10,000.
Swali.
Yes. Sasa je, sisi tunapenda kuzalisha na tunajiandaa kupeleka UK. NMB Bank iko tayari kuambatana na sisi au ni siasa?
Okay.
Yeah.
Mimi na background ya media kidogo pia. Tunaambiwaga tutenganisha between fact and feeling. Swali na maoni. Sasa ungesema tuko tayari kuandamana na sisi. Sasa ukisema au ni siasa, hayo ni maoni. Lakini NMB watakuwa na session maalum baada ya hapa. Asante. Dada, naomba maswali tu mafupi specific from what we have heard this morning or this afternoon. But NMB are going to have a specific session into those details. Petronila is going to be here to also talk about the details on quality and standards. David is also going to be here. You are not going to be here.
Habari za mchana.
Nzuri.
Kwa jina naitwa Amina Jabir, ni mkurugenzi wa Baba Ali Tailoring Mart. Naona hapa tumezungumza sana kuhusu mambo ya mazao, lakini tupo pia watu wa textile. Je, kwenye hili mnatusaidiaje ili na sisi tuweze kuingiza product zetu kule? Japo tunaingiza lakini kipembeni pembeni, unaenda mwenyewe una ile product African style unaingia nayo unauza. Je, tunapata fursa gani ya kuweza kuingia kama wanavyoweza kuingia mzetu? Asante.
Okay. Yes, hapo. Mzee mwenzangu. Karibu.
Asante sana presenter. Mimi naitwa ndugu Frederick Maringo. Swala langu ni kwamba tumewahi kuwa na semina miaka ya nyuma kama mwaka 93, we had a seminar before which was attended by the British ambassador in Tanzania. I was running a project which was conducted by Christian professionals of Tanzania and the CPTA at Bunju in 1993. They came and visited my project, the project I was running. It was sponsored by UN. They were very much impressed by what we are doing. Actually, we are doing horticulture. They liked very much what we are doing in producing horticulture at our farm down there. But in this kind of seminar we are having, I've not heard much about horticulture. And Tanzania is an agricultural country, it's very big, very vast with a big of land. So what I'm saying is that I would like some more clarification on horticulture.
Horticulture.
Yeah, because I think the Brits might like more of horticulture than anything, and they are easily accessible by our youth in Tanzania. Thank you very much.
Are you currently exporting to anywhere?
They gave me a Land Rover as a gift, so I'm confident of that one.
Very interesting. Hivi naomba niulize swali na niulize Kiswahili. Hivi wote tulikuwepo kwenye hiki chumba kwa masaa mawili yaliyopita? Naomba niulize swali hili kwa heshima na taadhima. Hivi wote tulikuwemo kwenye hiki chumba kwa masaa mawili yaliyopita? Wote? Kwa mwili, akili, mawazo, roho? Okay. Bwana mdogo kwanza hapa.
Kwa jina naitwa Geoffrey Sultan. Swali langu nilikuwa na swali pia na kupendekeza pia. Unajua sasa hivi dunia iko katika teknolojia na nilikuwa napenda swali ni kwamba je, kuna platform ambayo ipo inayomconnect yule mtu anayetaka mazao kule Uingereza na mkulima ambaye yuko huko Tanzania kuweza ku get connected na kuweza kufanya biashara, na kama haipo basi nipendekeze kuweza kufanya hivyo, kwamba kuna platform. Sasa hivi ukiangalia wenzetu wanauza nguo China, sio, kuna zipo hizo platform ambazo mtu yuko Kariakoo anawasiliana na yule Mchina ambaye yuko kule China kwa ajili ya kuweza kufanya biashara. Okay. Kwa hiyo nilikuwa napendekeza hivyo kitu. Asanteni.
Asante sana. Yes.
Asanteni sana. Naitwa Kalusa, ni mkurugenzi wa kampuni tunajiita Nepstar. Naomba wa Tanzania, kwanza nafurahi sana, hii ni fursa kubwa sana. Tusianze kulaumu wa Kenya kwamba wanachukua bidhaa zetu. Kiongozi, naomba kwanza TanTrade watimize wajibu wao wa kufundisha Watanzania wanazofanya biashara. Kupitia kwa Madamu Mloe, maana yake ni kwamba bidhaa zinazotokana na kilimo nyingi zinatakiwa ziangalie kwamba zimetunzwa kwa matunzo ya namna gani. Swali ni kwamba hivi, nafikiri kama ni ombi ama kama advice kwa Mtanzania yeyote ambaye atafanya biashara ya mambo ya kilimo, anaweza tuona sisi tuko Bongo Plaza pale ghorofa ya 5 tuna mbolea za organic, kilimo cha organic. Na swali langu ni kwamba
that is a commercial inatosha.
Asante. Swali langu sasa nakuja ni hivi hapa. Tunaweza tukapata orodha ya bidhaa halisi kama ndugu alisema hapa za zinatokea kule ndani UK.
Haukuona kwenye presentation?
Zipo, lakini zimekuwa very scant. Katika mwanzo kubwa very scant.
Okay.
Tuna mazao mengi sana Tanzania. Asante.
Jamani, naona maswali yamekwisha. Kwa maoni yangu, mikono bado iko mingi lakini maswali yamekwisha.
Mheshimiwa Balozi na swali moja. Mheshimiwa Balozi na swali. Hapa.
Tafadhali liwe swali.
Dakika moja. Mheshimiwa Balozi, kwanza mimi naitwa Gadiel Mtema, ni mkurugenzi wa taasisi ya Nuru ya Taifa Tanzania, ni NGO, lakini tumejikita katika masuala ya kilimo ambacho ni kilimo kwa Tanzania bado hajawa cha kimkakati, lakini kuna mkoa ambao wanalima kilimo kwa kiasi kikubwa sana. Kuna zao moja linaitwa zao la vanilla na ni flavor. Kwa mkoa wa Kagera kuna sitofahamu ya soko la vanilla. Na leo katika imezungumzia fursa mbalimbali za kilimo na biashara. Sasa swali langu linakuja kwamba je, serikali kupitia kwa wewe ambaye ni Mheshimiwa Balozi, mna mkakati upi kuhakikisha Zao la vanilla kwa sababu ni zao ambalo linahitajika katika mambo mengi, ni flavor katika masuala mengi sana, ikiwa ni wine, ice cream, vitu vingi sana.
Swali.
Na mpango gani kuhusu zao la vanilla kuweza kusafirisha katika nchi za Uingereza, Israel na Ujerumani?
Jamani, ni kweli si kweli maswala yamekwisha? Mikono bado ipo, lakini sina kama kuna maswali. Mmoja asiniangushe. Swali. Tunazungumzia soko la Uingereza.
Habari zenu, mimi naitwa Kaizirege Kamara, mimi ni exporter. Nataka niulize dada Mloa, nafikiri Mloa, kwenye procedure za ku-export tunajua kwamba ni lazima facility iwe isajiliwe. Sasa kuna changamoto moja ambayo tunataka kuielewa tunapofanya process huku. Kwa mfano sisi exporters wa asali ambao tuko registered EU, ilikuwa kwamba ukishapata namba ya EU maana yake tulikuwa tuna export easily kwenda kule au in US. Lakini regulations zilizokuja kwa mfano EU tulikuwa tunapata uzoefu kwa sababu EU tuna export bulk. Na tumeona kwamba in UK ile approve number lazima iwe kwenye label kwa sababu tunaanza ku-export in small packs. Sasa tulikuwa tunajaribu kuangalia kwa nini kunakuwa na ucheleweshaji, kwa sababu tulikuwa tunapata certificate ya health certificate kutoka TFS kwa mfano. Sasa hivi kwa sababu nyuki wameweka kwenye animal wanakuwa identified kwenye animal, ina maana tumebadilishwa, tumepelekwa kwenye DVS ambao ni chini ya Wizara ya Mifugo, ambao ndio DVS ndio anapaswa kusaini ile health certificate. Sasa kuna ucheleweshaji pale, hatujui unatoka upande wetu au upande wa UK kwa ajili ya kuapprove zile namba, kwa mfano new facilities zinazoanza kwamba wanataka kuexport. Sasa swali langu ni kwamba je, ucheleweshaji umekuwa approved, inacheleweshwa kwa upande wa kwetu au ucheleweshaji unakuwa upande wa UK kupata approval number? Nitaka kupata hiyo. Asante sana.
Asante sana. Thanks a lot. Petronila, una hamu ya kujibu, but I will encourage you not to do that now because you also have a specific dedicated session after this formal session where you respond to all those nitty-gritties. I have a lot of questions online that I'm receiving. I will also invite the KM will also want to leave soon, but I'm all, George. Where's George? Okay. So we'll also encourage people to send their questions online via email. Which email should they be using?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is George Kalumuna, and my email address is, if you're able to write it right now, it's okay, or otherwise I can share with you there outside. george.karumuna@nj.go.tz. george.karumuna@nj.go.tz. Thank you.
Nje, when you say nje, it means nje. Haya bana. Colleagues, mtanisamehe, I think I'm going to be rude and not allow any more questions. There are also questions, as I've said, asking nashauri kuwepo na kamati maalum itakayo organize the next steps. Kuna mwingine anasema I am on textile industry and I'm interested to start exporting to the UK, but I don't know where to start, the quantity and the quality that is required for me to export my products. Ninashauri kuwepo, where do we find the buyers in the UK? And then there was somebody ambaye pia alikuwa anatuma huko na bip kwa kusisitiza, anasema flexibility kwenye rules of origin. Presenter alikuwa anamaanisha flexibility kwenye which angle. Kupata soko sio rahisi. Waziri kaongea kuhusu infrastructure cost ya kuleta avocado kutoka mikoani. Tunaomba serikali isaidie. Mwingine ameandika a long paragraph, I don't think. So I think allow me, some of these things will be responded to virtually. Sasa we knew how to pick questions, but I don't know if we knew how to respond to those questions and who is going to respond to those questions. Laura. So how are we going to respond to those questions? The presenters, is there any presenter online who would like to respond to any question or set of questions they've had? If you are there, please shout and we will invite you. Is anyone online? Is Sabiha online? Who is online? Petronila? Oh, everyone has conveniently left the room. Okay, so who's that? Rebecca Schneider. Right. By the way, Rebecca, you sound very English, but your second name doesn't look English.
Very confusing because I hold 3 nationalities and was not born in the UK as well. So.
Okay. So, makes sense.
Just really quickly, so there were quite a few questions in the chat that have been responded to, but I think just a couple answers for those in the room if you cannot see the chat. So one was around how do we understand where we can meet buyers. And I would say that there's 2 ways that you can do that. One is through essentially going to UK trade fairs, and I put in the chat that one of the largest UK food and drink fairs, IFE, was actually held in London this week. I would really highly encourage you next year, if you're a food or drink producer, to go to IFE, as well as there's larger international events like Gulf Food. If you have any questions about which kind of events to go to, you can come to myself or other UK embassy colleagues and talk a bit about what those opportunities are. The other way to do it is through the Growth Gateway, and this is actually very tentative because where the Growth Gateway has been useful is not necessarily actually helping you secure the contract itself, but in some cases introducing you to places like UK supermarkets who might have large contracts available, whether that's for avocado, mango, etc., and might be interested in kind of overseeing what's going on in your country and then being able to then make those connections. So I wanted to comment on that. In the room, there was one question at the very beginning about private standards, and I just want to talk on standards really quickly. So for the first bit of standards, so just because we didn't mention them today, there are fresh fruit and vegetable marketing standards that do apply in the UK, and I'm happy to put in the chat what those standards are, and those are for fresh fruit and produce, vegetables, nuts, and herbs, and there will either be very specific marketing standards or there will be more general ones. The more general ones are, does it have any pests? Is it of, clean, it's not spoiled, the skin's not broken, etc. On the specific marketing standards, there will be classes that you must adhere to. Now, the question in the room also asked about private standards, about pack houses like the BRCGS scheme. I would just say that, yes, these are things that the UK does care about, and a great information resource, if you don't already know it, is the British Standards Institute, BSI, and that has a lot of information on those private standards that the UK will ask that you try to adhere to as much as possible. So I hope that answers the question that was in the room. I don't know if there are any other specific questions that could be translated for us, but if there are, I'm happy to take any kind of agri-specific ones, or I'm sure Petronella can speak to you later today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I think the number of questions, or at least the number of hands, show the interest of people to actually attack the UK market. And the purpose of this session this morning was to create that appetite and start the momentum. I would like to introduce a few important people who can help us in the next steps. Ombeni, Director of Trade Integration, Ministry of Industry and Trade. People might wish to know you. He's the guy. Manongi? Where? Manongi also. Oh, it's not you. Director of Trade Development, Minister of Industry and Trade. There was Deo Shire. Where's Deo? Hey, Deo from TanTrade. We need Officer Special for Internal Trade and External Trade, Export Trade. These are the people to catch. Now, of course, NMB, people with money, NMB, please. Taha, those who are dealing in horticulture, kuna mtu alisema hakusikia horticulture, sijui kama haikutajwa horticulture. Kuna mtu anasema hakusikia kabisa horticulture, but Taha is, if you want to export route for a horticulture, Taha is the most credible organization. Nafikiri wakatibu mkuu atakubaliana na mimi. Who else I'm supposed to now, you guys from the Copra, CPB, TMX, WRRB, all these, you have chief executive officers of cereals and other produce board, crop, that is high, Copra, that is Copra, Copra, Irene Madeje, and then Patrick Mongela, cereals and other produce board, you see. Sasa, Asange Bangu, Warehouse Receipts Regulatory Board. Who else? Dignitary gani mwingine wa wizara ya nani? Cashew Nut Board, this is the guy, these are the person to talk. We have not talked about tourism a lot, but the new managing director of Tanzania Tourist Board is over here. Tanzania Investment Center, represented by Elizabeth. Which other dignitary dignitary, what's that? The dignitary, that's the language, not dignitary. I'm thinking of signatory. These are the trade facilitation agencies, regulatory authorities. So please let us use them, utilize them. They are paid salaries to do that. Of course, myself, if you want to continue linkage. Okay, asanteni sana for Balozi Mbelo Kairuki, if you are still online, please. I think first an appreciation for your idea. This has been purely his idea, and he really pushed us to make sure it happens. A month ago, he did a similar session on UK export finance. It was purely, only online, and it was attended, I think, by over 100 people. So this time we are doing this one, and I'm sure something else is coming. Now Mafuri on board, you watch the space on tourism. Balozi Mbelo Kairuki. Before I invite the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Agriculture, to give us the closing remarks, na tunaheshimu sana kwa yeye kutenga muda wake. Balozi ame drop out. Okay. Odilo is on the phone with is there a question we can respond while we're waiting for? Kuna mtu anasema hakusikia kuhusu textile. Ni kweli hatukuzungumzia hakusikia kuhusu textile hapa? Tusaidiane. Did we talk about textile or not? Kwa hiyo but these presentations zita and then kuna mtu amesema tunishauri kuwepo kwa kamati maalum itakayoorganize next move, itakayounganisha exporters. Mzee wa Tanzania Exporters Association. Yes. Wewe kwa nini sikukusimamisha? Huyu ni mzee wa Tanzania Exporters Association. If you want to export, there's an association. He is the Tanzania Exporters Association. Samahani siku. Ulitakiwa upige kelele pale mwanzoni. Tafadhali. And then I'm looking at other questions while we are waiting. Is there a community page, WhatsApp group for trade or association for trade and traders so people can join? If not, can we create traders? So I think there's an appetite for people to come together. And because the UK market is an opportunity that has opened up, we could, I don't know, not us, but I think you can self-organize, create a WhatsApp group. If you have 200 people attacking the UK market, at least even if 10% of them are successful, we will be making progress annually. Nini kingine tunasema tukisikia? Quickly. Certificate origin ya UK kwa Tanzania vipi inatolewa na nani? Who issues? Okay. Who issues the certificate of origin for products that are imported into UK? I think either David or Petronella, you respond to that. Asante, thanks. Welcome back, Balozi. I'm sorry we went a bit over time. Thanks for making time. Nilikuwa na kushukuru sana for your initiative. I was telling participants, this is entirely your initiative, your idea, and really you have been pushing us to making sure that this happens. So thank you so much, and thanks for making time to be with us since early morning your time. Karibu sana, Mheshimiwa Balozi. Mheshimiwa, natusikia? Umemute, nafikiri, you're on mute. You seem to be on mute still. Au ni ile teknolojia ya kwetu. Balozi, you seem to be on mute. If you can hear us, please unmute. Can the admin unmute Balozi from your device? Let me do this way. Na kuweka kwenye loudspeaker tukusikie kutoka kwenye simu yako. So tunaweza tukakuona, but use your phone as a speaker. I'm putting you on the loudspeaker.
Okay.
Okay.
Nashukuru MC kwa kunipa nafasi. Leo Uingereza tuko first world, lakini ndio changamoto kuliko hata nyumbani Tanzania. Sasa
iko loudspeaker tayari.
Asante Mheshimiwa Balozi Ulanga. Nashukuru kwa fursa hii ya kuzungumza. Bahati mbaya naona leo kumekuwa na changamoto ya network. Mimi nijua tuko gaibuni huku mambo ni mazuri, kumbe na sisi Kanyigo kule Bukoba. Anyway, asante sana kwa fursa hii ya kushiriki kwenye huu mkutano, lakini nitoe pongezi za dhati kwa washiriki wote ambao wamehudhuria huu mkutano ambao kwa kweli umekuwa na manufaa makubwa. Shukrani za kwanza nisipeleke kwa waziri wetu wa viwanda na biashara Dr. Shatu Kijaji, ambaye kwa kweli ndio mtu wa kwanza tulimpa hili wazo na yeye akatikia wito haraka sana. Lakini pili, nitoe shukrani kwa taasisi zote za umma, Wizara ya Mambo ya Nje na Wizara ya Viwanda na Biashara na taasisi zoko chini ya hizo wizara kwa kuweza kufacilitate huu mkutano. Kwa kweli mkutano huu umetuonyesha kwamba kulikuwa kuna sababu kubwa ya watu kupata nafasi ya kusikiliza fursa zilizoko kwenye soko la Uingereza, na walikuwa wana lack information nyingi kuhusu hii fursa. Lakini pia nitoe shukrani kwa ubalozi wa Uingereza na serikali ya Uingereza, hususan Wizara ya Biashara DEFRA na ubalozi wa Uingereza na Wizara ya Mambo ya Nje ya Uingereza kwa support kubwa, na pia nawashukuru ITC kwa kazi nzuri waliofanya ya utafiti na kutoa wasilisho zuri kwenye mkutano wa leo. Lakini vile vile nitumie nafasi hii kutoa shukrani kwa watoa mada wote pamoja na wale waliotoka Uingereza, dada Petronella, na kushukuru, japo nimesikitika wamekwambia ufanye presentation kwa Kiingereza wakati unaongea na Waswahili. Mimi nataka uongee Kiswahili, Waswahili wasikilize kwa lugha yetu, lakini naamini ile session tutakayokuwa nayo baada ya sasa itasaidia sana uongee kwa Kiswahili. Mambo ya Kiingereza hivyo achana wewe, viache huko London, ukija huko kuzungumza Kiswahili watu waelewe, pasiwe na maswali. Lingine nimeona watu wanauliza tutapata wapi taarifa ya masoko? Taarifa ya masoko, sisi ubalozi, moja ya kazi yetu ni hiyo, tutaifanya kuwapeni taarifa, na ubalozi wa Uingereza hapo chini ya dada Laura Godfrey na timu yao wako hapo na wapo tayari kuwasaidia kupata taarifa mbalimbali kuhusu fursa. Lakini pia nitoe rai mshiriki kwenye maonyesho ya bidhaa. Sasa hivi London kuna maonyesho ambayo yamemalizika jana ya bidhaa za kilimo na vyakula. Yalikuwa na watu zaidi ya 5,000, makampuni mbalimbali, na walikuwa wanaulizia bidhaa za Tanzania, korosho, vanilla, nini, lakini Tanzania haikuwepo. Kulikuwa kuna taasisi moja tu ya Muleba wamekuja na vanilla yao basi. Naomba next time pengine country wa lead initiative ya kuwa na banda kubwa kwa ajili ya kupata taarifa zitakazowasaidia wa Tanzania kupata taarifa. Na maonyesho haya yako tarehe 17 na hadi 19 Machi mwakani. Kwa hiyo nitoe rai kwa wale wenye bidhaa wasiache kushiriki kwenye haya maonyesho makubwa ya bidhaa za hapa Uingereza. Na bodi zote hizi za mazao ningependa pia na wenyewe wachangamkia ya maonyesho ili waweze kutoa taarifa mbalimbali. Otherwise sisi kama balozi tupo tayari kuendelea kuwapeni taarifa mbalimbali ya maendeleo ya hapa na fursa za hapa. Wananchi msichoke kutusikiliza, msichoke kufuatilia, lakini ni waombe watumishi wenzangu wa serikalini tuwe proactive kutoa information, because tofauti ya wanaofanikiwa na wasiofanikiwa ni taarifa. Moja ya sifa wanazopata wanaofanikiwa wa Nigeria, wa Kenya, they have information, timely information, and they act on the information. Kwa hiyo na sisi wenye dhamana serikalini tusiache kutoa taarifa kwa wakati kwa wananchi, kwa wafanyabiashara wetu. Hata hii semina yenyewe wakati nimeleta ile wazo la hii semina, kuna baadhi ya wenzangu serikalini walikuwa waone umuhimu wake, tena walikuwa wanapinga vita kwamba hamna sababu ya hii semina, tulishaifanya. Lakini kumbe watu wengi hawajui. Leo watu wengi wamefahamu mambo mengi. Kwa hiyo this thing is important, na ile isiwe mwisho, lazima tuendelee na specific. Sasa watu wa textile tukae nao, tuwaeleweshe fursa zao, watu wa agri tukae nao, watu wa minerals tukae nao, watu wa uvuvi, ili waweze kupata taarifa sahihi. Na mwisho nimshukuru Katibu Mkuu wa Wizara ya Mambo ya Nje kwa kutuwezesha na timu yake, Balozi Ulanga, wakina Berege, kwa kazi nzuri waliofanya, wakina Ombeni wa Wizara ya Viwanda na Biashara. Tuendelee kushirikiana na sisi bwana, tupo tayari. Tuko hapa kwa ajili ya kuwatumikieni nyinyi, na we are not doing you any favors. Sio msaada, ni wajibu wetu. Tunaishi hapa kwa kodi zenu. Kwa hiyo we are here to serve you anytime. Tutumeni, tuagizeni wakati wowote. Asanteni sana na kila laheri, na natumaini baada ya hii session mtakuwepo wale ambao mnataka kuuza bidhaa za vyakula. Dada Petronella atakuwa na more time ya kuwapeni maelezo ya kina. Kuna bwana anaitwa David yuko hapo, yeye ni importer mkubwa wa bidhaa za vyakula hapa Uingereza. Yeye lakini anaingiza bidhaa nyingi kutoka Kenya, kutoka Nigeria, kutoka Uganda, Tanzania, hajapata za kutosha. Kaeni naye, msikilizeni, atawaambieni anachohitaji. Demand ni kubwa sana na wako tayari kununua bidhaa zetu. Asanteni sana, na asante sana Mheshimiwa Balozi Uranga.
Asante sana Balozi Mbelwa Kairuki, balozi wetu nchini Uingereza, lakini pia ndio anaitwa ni Dean ni nini Kiswahili? Amidi mkuu wa mabalozi wa Tanzania walioko nje. Yani manake he's the most senior Tanzanian ambassador or high commissioner aliyoko nje ya nchi. Kwa asante sana, ana uzoefu mkubwa sana. Naomba sasa nitumie nafasi hii kwanza kumshukuru sana kwa kuwepo kwake Mheshimiwa Katibu Mkuu Wizara ya Kilimo Bwana Gerard Geoffrey Mweli. Kwa kweli amekaa amesikiliza, nimeona kuna wakati alikuwa na hamu na yeye ya kuchangia. Sasa nimkaribishe aweze kutufungulia rasmi, alafu tutarudi kwenye matangazo sasa ya kiutekelezaji. Karibu sana Mheshimiwa Katibu Mkuu.
Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, amani ya Bwana iwe nanyi. Asalamu alaikum. Kwanza nishukuru sana kwa balozi kwa kuratibu kikao hiki. Mheshimiwa Balozi Kerugi na kushukuru, na sisi Wizara ya Kilimo tulivyoalikwa tumekuja wote. Mimi nilikuwepo toka mwanzo. Mbele yangu hapa kuna mkurugenzi wa Cereal and Other Produce Regulatory Authority, dada yangu Irene, na huyu tumemtoa sekta binafsi, manake mlituambia sisi warasimu sana. Tulivyounda hii taasisi tukasema sasa tukamtoa aliyekuwa Chief Executive Officer wa Financial Sector Deepening Trust, naamini hata kuwa kama sisi, si ndio? Hata open up opportunities. Tulikuwa na taasisi yetu ambayo inaongoza kufanya biashara, it's a national milling. Baada ya kufanya ubinafsishaji, baada ya kuuza baadhi ya bidhaa, tulibaki na taasisi yetu ambayo inaitwa Cereal and Other Produce Regulatory Authority. Pia tumemchukua former banker aje kututransform. Kakaangu hapa ambaye huyu ni Mongela, alikuwa ni Director of Corporate Services wa TIB. Naamini mtafanya yale ambao wanalalamikia wengine, mtafanya yale. Mtatufundisha sasa jinsi ya kufanya vyema zaidi. Na nyinyi mkifanya kama yale, manake kama nchi tutakuwa tumekosa solution. Manake tulikuwa tunalaumu wenyewe serikali warasimu sana. Sasa hivi tukasema taasisi zote mpya sasa tuwalete na wale wenzetu watuambie jinsi ya kufanya. Na lengo moja tu, sisi mwaka jana tulibadilisha vision yetu, tukasema vision yetu simple, na kila mmoja anaweza akatoka anaijua hapa, ya Wizara ya Kilimo. Ni feed ourselves and feed others commercially. Imeisha hiyo. Sisi tunalima kwa ajili ya kujilisha wenyewe na kuwalisha wengine kibiashara. Na we have seen here from last year tumeanza kuona the increase ya export. Na the leading ni horticulture, lakini hatujaiwekeza vya kutosha, tunaendelea kuwekeza. Changamoto zipo, tutashughulika nazo. Lakini changamoto kubwa ambayo tunaipata kwenye ni ufahamu. Kwa tunawashukuru sana Wizara ya Mambo ya Nje, Wizara ya Viwanda kwa kuratibu hili, na sisi kama sekta wezeshi ambao mnaturatibu nyie, tuko tayari kuhakikisha kwamba we deliver based on your coordination. Na Mheshimiwa Balozi, hii ndio maana halisi ya economic diplomacy. Kwa nawashukuru mabalozi wote wawili, Yolanga na Mheshimiwa Balozi Mbelo. Kuna maswali yaliulizwa, nadhani tunatakiwa tujibu sisi serikali. La kwanza, una mzee aliuliza vanilla, maana tutaanza lini kupeleka vanilla? Vanilla serikali haifanye trade, wanaofanya trade ni wakulima, ni wafanya biashara. Kuna mazao ambayo yalikuwa yana potential kubwa sana, yalikuwa hayana regulator. Kwa tunamshukuru, kwanza ni washukuru TAHA tumemtumia kwa muda mrefu kama apex body ya kwa ajili ya kushughulikia mazao ya mboga, lakini sasa hivi tuna apex body ambayo ni COPRA, bila kuandamine potential ya TAHA, they work together, lakini atawa coordinate. Vanilla, moja ya tatizo kubwa, watu walikuwa na taarifa nyingi ambazo sio sahihi. Maana kuna mtu alikuwa anasema kilo moja milioni 2.5 3, watu wanalima mwisho hawapati soko, wanailaumu serikali kwa sababu hatujatengeneza platform ya kutoa taarifa. Kwa tunakuja na COPRA, lakini kitu ambacho tumeamua baada ya kusikiliza na kupata exposure hii ya wenzangu baada ya masaa mawili yaliyopita, sisi tutafanya mambo mawili makubwa. Jambo la kwanza, pamoja na zile address nyingi za website, bado nimeona watu wanauliza tutapata wapi hizi taarifa. Kwa hiyo nimemwelekeza mkurugenzi mkuu wa COPRA hapa tutengeneze guideline ambao ni moja, ukienda kwenye website yetu utasema soko, how to access soko la China. Tutakaa na dada yangu pale na wengine wote hawa, na nimeelekeza hapa tuandike barua rasmi kwa ubalozi, tufanye session ya 3 days kutaka guideline moja, afu tunaweka zile link zote kwenye website ya Wizara ya Kilimo. Pamoja na ile guideline you can get the link. Lakini pia sisi tuna call center, tumefungua call center ambayo kwa siku tunapokea zaidi ya maswali 5,000, lakini maswali yote ni ya mbolea, mbegu. Nikaona kumbe kuna watu wanahitaji wana maswali lakini hatujawatengenezea platform. Lakini wale watu wangu nikisema kesho waanze kujibu yale hawajui majibu yake. Kwa hiyo namuomba hapa balozi na kwenye uratibu wenu tuwe na 2 week session ya kutrain wale watu wa call center, then after 2 weeks naomba simu yangu hapo niwatajie watu namba ya call center. Ili muandike kila mmoja hapa. Mwisho wa mwezi kila mtu anajua simu ya kupiga apate zile taarifa sahihi. Sasa namba yetu ya call center ni 07 ambao tunafanya asubuhi mpaka saa 4 usiku ni 0733 800 200. Kwa tutawatrain, tutatengeneza session na dada yangu Petronella na wengine waweze kujibu maswali ya msingi, frequent asked question. Tutatengeneza guideline tujue haya ni maswali 100 frequent asked questions kwa ajili wakiulizwa waweze kujibu, lakini pia kuweza kuguide watu kupitia hizi tutawapitisha kwenye hii miongozo mbalimbali ambazo imetolewa hapa. Jambo la 3, kwa yote anataka kufanya biashara ya kilimo, nitoe confidence ya kwanza. Maabara yetu ya phytosanitary from last year imekuwa registered internationally OECD. Kwa kikitoka cheti hapa kinakubalika nchi zote. Tuna hiyo tatizo la Kenya. Hili tatizo tunapojadili biashara tuwe makini sana. Kenya anakuja kununua kwa nani? Yale mahindi yamelima nani? Si mtu mwenyewe amelima. Kwa hiyo tunachotakiwa kufanya hapa ni kumexpose mtu, tumwambie kuna soko unaweza ukauza kwa shilingi 10,000. Ndio kazi yetu kama serikali. Aamue mwenyewe auze kwenye soko la 1,000 la Kenya, Kenya atampelekea Uingereza au sisi tutengeneze opportunity tupeleke Uingereza. Mwaka jana mahindi yetu yameanguka kutokana na mambo haya. Kenya akaamua kununua sehemu nyingine kwa sababu moja ya tatizo ambalo tunalifanya Tanzania, tunahisi tunahitajika sana. Alikuwa anamwambia na ndugu yangu Isaac, anasema sasa Uingereza waje kufungua ofisi hapa. Nikamwambia Isaac, hii ni program ya Afrika inaitwa Developing Country Trading Scheme, sio Tanzania na UK Trading Scheme. If you are not active, others will take this chance. Wakaendelea. Sasa tunahisi Uingereza wanatuhitaji sana kuliko sisi tunavyohitaji dunia. Let's take the opportunity, be active, proactive. Tuhakikishe tuna take up this opportunity. Tukisema kwamba mpaka waje kutufungulia ofisi hapa wao watatueleze, useme mimi sijaelewa, rudia. Ili wewe ukafanye ukauze, hautauza, na tutakuja mwakani tutafanya kikao kama hiki, tutaulizana maswali haya. Kwa we will play our part. You have to play yours. Kwamba tutatengeneza platform za taarifa. Watu wangu hapa wakurugenzi hao 3 watabaki hapa kwenye next session kwa ajili ya kubadilishana maarifa na namba, lakini nyinyi lazima mfanye kazi yenu. Mchukue hizo taarifa mzitumie. Na hii platform tunaitengeneza ni nyinyi mtuulize tufanye. Lazima hiyo ni kazi ya pamoja. Serikali tutafanya kazi yetu na nyinyi ambao mnataka kufanya biashara hii mfanye kazi yenu. Lakini la mwisho muhimu, sisi sio tunaotegemewa sana. Maana tunang'ang'aniaga vitu vyetu mpaka vina expire. Kwamba bwana hii tuwe proactive, tufanye hii kazi. Tusipofanya hivi, Kenya kesho atapitia hizo website, ataenda kuuza na atakuja kununua mahindi na mimi sitamzuia, nitatoa export permit. Kutoka last year tumesema sisi hatufungi export permit hata mara moja. Mtu kalima mwenyewe atauza anapotaka. Kazi ya serikali ni kutafuta masoko na kumwambia mkulima asipotaka ataendelea kuuza vile vile. Nyinyi ambao mmepata opportunity ya exposure kuwasaidia wakulima, tuwasaidie pamoja. Sisi kitu ambacho tunaenda kuwasaidia ni mambo mawili. Mtu akija akisema anataka kufanya biashara, sisi tumejenga pack house. Zote tumewapa private sector. Hata ile pack house ya Njombe tumeipa private sector of Africa. Wala sio Mtanzania, lakini ananunua maparachichi ya Watanzania na ana export. Kwa nyinyi ambao mmepata exposure na opportunity ya kukutana hivi, sio wakulima wote watapata, tuwasaidie wakulima wetu pamoja. Tukishindwa atauza kwa yoyote. Na it's better kuuza kwa shilingi 500 kuliko mimi nadhani watu hawajawahi kuona uchungu wa kuozewa na mazao shambani. kutokana na hizi policy kwamba sasa hatuna kuuza Kenya, hamna kuuza Uganda, unaenda Ulaya, unaenda kwa njia ipi? Hujajiandaa. Tujiandae sasa hivi, lakini at the end of the day lazima to create opportunity kwa wakulima, na hii ni responsibility ya kila mmoja. Nyie ambao Mungu amewasaidia kupata hii nafasi ya kusikiliza, kuwa na uelewa, kuwa na elimu, na sisi ambao Mungu ametusaidia tufanyie kazi nyie. Baada ya kusema haya, mimi nawashukuru sana, lakini commitment yangu ni kwamba we'll be with you. Mtu yote anataka taarifa hata ikosa. Mtu yote anataka support, tutafanya kazi usiku na mchana kutoa hiyo support. Asanteni sana.
Hawa ni aina tofauti ya makatibu wakuu. Asante sana sana. Nafikiri mtakubaliana na mimi ukiangalia combination ya katibu mkuu Mweli na mheshimiwa waziri wake Hussein Bashe, tusipobadilisha kilimo safaria hatutafanikiwa kukibadilisha. Kwa hiyo nashukuru sana katibu mkuu. Mheshimiwa Balozi Kairuki, nafikiri kuna mmoja mawili ya kumalizia kabla hatujarudisha huko kwetu. Balozi. Oh, okay. I have to go have my phone. Okay, let's see. Tunakusikia Mheshimiwa Balozi. Tunakusikia.
Mheshimiwa Katibu Mkuu, nakushukuru kwa salamu za kumalizia mkutano wetu. Lakini na mimi naomba nimalize kabisa kwa shukrani kwa watu muhimu waliowezesha mkutano wa leo. Wa kwanza ni taasisi ya TAHA. Asanteni sana TAHA kwa ufadhili ambao umewezesha huduma ya mawasiliano ya mkutano wetu. La taasisi ya pili, napenda kuishukuru benki ya NMB. Benki ya NMB imekuwa ni mshirika wa kutumainiwa wa kufacilitate masuala ya biashara kati ya Uingereza na Tanzania. Tunawashukuru sana kwa support yenu. Na mwisho napenda kuishukuru taasisi ya TPSF. Wamekuwa washirika wetu toka mwanzo kutoa taarifa kwa wanachama wao, lakini pia wamefadhili baadhi ya matukio ambayo yamewezesha mkutano wa leo. Nawashukuru sana nyote, na mwisho nawashukuru washiriki wote ambao mmekuwa mwanzo na mwisho. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Balozi. Ndugu zangu, kimoja ambacho amekisema katibu mkuu waga nakisema mara nyingi, fursa waga hazipotei hata siku moja, ila zinachukuliwa na mtu mwingine. Some opportunities are never lost, but they are taken by someone else. Tumetumia masaa karibu 3 leo kuambiana fursa iliyopo kwenye soko la Uingereza. Sasa hii fursa haitapotea, na hii sio fursa ya Tanzania peke yake kama alivyosema katibu mkuu. Kwa ujumla hii skimu iko kwenye nchi 65 zinazoendelea. Sio nchi moja, sio nchi mbili, nchi 65. Sisi tuko kwenye band nafikiri ya nchi 8 ambazo ndio tuna fursa kubwa zaidi, ambapo ni 99.8 ya tunachokipeleka kinakuwa hakitozwi kodi. Kuna mtu aliuliza kuhusu flexibility ya rules of origin, ile kanuni za asilia, kwamba sisi unaweza kawa kitu kimoja na kiimport kutoka Mauritius, kingine umekiimport kutoka Kenya, kingine umekiimport kutoka Nigeria, alafu ukaongeza thamani kwa 25%, kitahesabika kama kimetoka Tanzania. Kwenye skimu nyingine au kwenye nchi nyingine wanatakiwa waongeze thamani kwa walau 50. Sisi walau 25%. Ukiprove kwamba nimeongeza thamani kwa 25% Tanzania, hicho kitu ni made in Tanzania na kitapata hizo benefits ambazo tumesikia. Kwa hiyo tumeambiana leo fursa, tuchangamkie fursa kama alivyosema katibu mkuu. Kazi ya serikali ni kufacilitate pale ambapo mtahitaji msaada wetu. David, so David, I'm not sure if everyone knows you. If you don't mind, if you can stand. So David is an importer in UK, and he has hunger to import from Tanzania. Kwa hiyo amekuja, he will be here this afternoon just to respond to your questions, also to create contacts and see how we can actually now start the action. Na Petronila atatuambia kuhusu standards. So I think tunaendelea kuwepo hapa wale ambao wangependa kuendelea sasa kwenda, those who want to take action, not just talk but action, please remain behind to continue those conversations. Jamani, nawashukuru sana. Huu ni mwezi mtukufu, kwa hiyo wote tumefunga. Mwezi mtukufu na Kwaresma ni Juma Kuu, kwa hiyo wote tumefunga. Kwaherini sana. Ndio maana hakuna maji, hamna nini.